Welcome to Intuitive Connection, where spirituality and psychology meet to help you be your best and brightest self. I'm your host, Victoria Shaw, and in each episode, I'll help you to awaken your own inner wisdom, step into your power, and live a more divinely inspired life. You're here to let your inner light shine. Are you ready? Let's do this. So hello and welcome to Intuitive Connection. Today we have an amazing topic with an amazing guest. My BFF soul sister, Lisa McCourt, is back on the show to talk about something that I'm so excited to talk about and also to share about her upcoming amazing book. So Lisa, welcome.
Thank you, love. Good to be with you always.
It's good to be with you always, too. So the book is, give me the name, because you know my left brain and my right brain don't play well together.
Free Your Joy, the 12 Keys to Sustainable Happiness.
And it's amazing. And I've read it now from cover to cover. And I'm so excited for the world to get their hands on this masterpiece. And there's so much good information in there around living joyfully, which is the thing that I believe everybody secretly wants to do. But for some reason, I think we have this idea that we have to do everything else first. And I think that because of the way our little brains are wired and our society is constructed and all of the things that we've been taught, I think sometimes we put the joy in life last when it should be the very first thing that we ever think about. So I'm putting it over to you and I want to see what you have to say.
Absolutely. We are programmed to want happiness. We want love. We want peace because innately, in some part of our being, we know that that is who we are. We come here as love. We come here as joy. We come here as complete bliss and complete full-on compassion for self and others. But our conditioning programs us not to experience ourselves that way. We get all these obstructions to that truth of who we are. And that whole thing about we have to do all these other things first, it's just because we've been taught in non-factual ways, but we have absorbed the messaging that that's what will make us worthy of joy or worthy of happiness. We don't believe that we deserve happiness unless we check all these boxes. And we're always creating from whatever we deep down believe. Whatever we deep down believe we're worthy of, whatever we deep down believe should be ours in this space and time, that's what we're going to create, both consciously and subconsciously. So we do all these things to go be busy out there to check all these boxes in hopes of up-leveling our worthiness.
I love that. And, I'm thinking, because I've been doing this little experiment with a bunch of people, but if you ask people, like, I have a class about how to solve your relationship problems, or I have a class about how to have your life suck less, or I have a class, to relieve misery, or I have a class, to solve your anxiety problems, right? People will line up. They will line up around the block for those classes. When you say, I have a class to help you free your joy, I mean, I'm signing up for that class. I am. And I hope many of our listeners are, but sometimes that seems less sexy and less interesting, even though, we want to solve the relationship problem so we can be happy. We want our life to be less miserable because we want to feel good. We want to relieve that anxiety because we want to be happy, right? Like that's what we want. And yet we feel like we have to go through the ring of fire to get there rather than recognizing there's a faster and easier way in. We don't always have to go through that negativity to get to the joy and the bliss and the peace and the happiness.
Absolutely. Yes. And that is just like a basic misunderstanding about how creation happens, how the world happens. We are so conditioned to think my external things have to all look a certain way so that I can feel joy inside. And that is just the complete opposite of how energy works. We have to have the joy. We have to have the inner experience of the energy that we're sending out there. And that's what creates all our externals. So it's just common sense to think, oh, that external thing, my relationship problems or my money problems or my anxiety problems, those are the things that are causing me to suffer when it's, we think if we can fix that, we'll fix what's inside, when that just is an endless loop. Because if we don't care to really pay attention to what's inside, what's creating it all, then it's just a big old game of whack-a-mole where we get one problem under control through struggling and striving to get it under control, but we're still sending out the energy that's creating more of the same essence of problems. And we're just going to keep creating it again and again because we haven't addressed the core wounds, the core creation source.
I love that. I love that so much because it is like whack-a-mole. And I think most people do live their lives playing whack-a-mole. And for a minute, you have that moment of satisfaction that you whacked the mole and a little bit of relief, which feels good. But relief and joy are different things, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's something to contrast. We all create contrast. We all have challenges. So, yes, it's true that when you've been in a place of contrast and you find relief from that contrast, you're going to appreciate that part of your life even more because you made it through the contrast. But focusing on that appreciation, keeping that appreciation energy is where a lot of us drop the ball because we're still sending out the energy that created that contrast to begin with. And so we're going to just keep creating it in other places. We haven't learned to use our powerful attention to direct it toward the appreciation, keep it on the appreciation, and create a new energy stream that we're sending out into the world.
Beautifulness. All right. I want to get to the 12 keys or some of the 12 keys. But I also, we off mic, we're talking and we did a video. So that actually was on mic. We did a video a little while ago where we talked about why joy is a hard sell. And we also talked about, you titled it something different. You titled it, Why Are People Afraid of Joy? And I want to talk about that because before we get to the 12 keys, I do think that sometimes we are actually afraid to follow the joy, right? We're taught that that's not safe. So I want to hear this from you. Why is that? Why are people afraid of the one thing that we all really, 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 really want and desire and deserve, and that is our birthright?
Yeah, it's that old programming of, don't get your hopes up. It's like we think if we set the bar low, we won't be disappointed. And to go all in on, I'm going to have consistent joy and happiness in my life. If you don't have an underlying belief that that's possible for you, that that's something that you deserve in every way, in every aspect of your life, then you're not going to want to go there because you feel like that's just going to be for sure a disappointment. That's just fairy dust. That's not something that anybody can have. And if that's your belief, which unfortunately is the belief that a lot of people have, then you're right. If that's what you believe, then that's what you're going to create. So yeah, it's really just that there aren't that many people walking the planet who have glimpsed the truth of who we are. And who we are is really the crux of everything I've taught in Joy School for 20 years, everything that's in the book. It's, Victoria, but some of our listeners might not know, I've used some Eckhart Tolle terminology that I borrowed from him many decades ago of the horizontal self and the vertical self. And most people walking the planet today, we just identify really, really strongly with our horizontal self, which is our name, our gender, our roles in this time and place, our identity that we've constructed. And we've really constructed that identity out of a lot of false programming that we picked up along the way. So it's not the truest aspect of us. The truest aspect is our vertical self, our source, our soul. And every single person possesses a soul, right? Everybody walking around out there has a soul. We've just been conditioned away from recognition of it. So everything that I do in Joy School, everything that the book is built around is bringing that aspect of us more into the foreground of our existence while gently just letting our horizontal self be a little bit behind in our experience of ourselves. We'll never get rid of it. We're not supposed to. We're here to have that dance between both. But at this point in human evolution, the dance is really not balanced. We're much more focused on our horizontal experience than we are a vertical experience.
I love that. And I think too, it's exactly what you said. I think that, that horizontal self is what we think of as who we are. And when we make that shift to understanding, oh no, you're your soul self, you're your spirit self, you're your higher self, and you're having this human experience, and you put your higher self in charge of the ego, so to speak, that's where everything changes, right? It's not about killing your personality. I love having a personality. I get to be here. It's very exciting, but I also recognize who's in charge, and I get out of the way as much as humanly possible and let the vertical self shine through.
And don't you think that most people at some point in their lives, if they really let themselves like think about it, have felt an experience? I think that's why religions have been so wildly, hugely a part of society and every country and I think that while most of us in this spiritual community recognize that there are some major flaws with organized religion, and every time that the answer to the question isn't love, then that's a major flaw. But most organized religions still have a lot of answers to the question that no, it's not love. I think that it's that somebody along the way felt that experience of their soul, had like that little peek behind the veil, and organized religion sort of offered a path to follow
Right.
to get more of that. I think most of us know our vertical self. We just haven't had a lot of experience in how to curate it and align with it and be there with it.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. I think we all know our vertical self because we're all souls and we've all had those experiences, whether it's watching a sunset or playing with your puppy or, giving birth to a child or watching someone else give birth to a child or creating an artistic masterpiece. Like we all have those moments when we are fully and completely aligned with who and what we really are. But I think the thing is that we try to recapture those moments the wrong way because a lot of us, I think, don't recognize the soul moments for what they are. And so we're chasing the happiness, the joy, the alignment in the vertical world with our vertical selves, not recognizing that that's the wrong toolkit to be using. That toolkit is great for having your human experience, but it's not ultimately going to connect you. Well, eventually it will, because that's how karma works, but it'll take a really long time to follow that path to reunite with your highest and truest self. And now, the veil is thinner now than it used to be. So we get those glimpses all the time, which is why people are drawn to your work and why people are drawn to this podcast, because the time is ripe for more of us to live in that more soul guided space. And your soul is joyous. I've shared this a couple times on the show, and I feel like sharing it now. I went through a little bit of a rough patch the winter before last, and just a lot was going on in my life, and emotionally it kind of caught up with me. And one night when I was in a particularly like uncomfortable space, and uncomfortable is being very, very generous to how I was feeling, all of a sudden I got a glimmer of what my soul was experiencing. I saw the whole perspective from, this other lens. And my soul was ecstatic. It was like, this is so cool. This is so beautiful. You're doing this amazing thing. Yay, you get to be here. And it was paradigm shifting moment. It really was. And, it only alleviated my discomfort for a few minutes, but it was enough to really understand on that visceral level how my soul wants me to be and how my soul is all the time and what is possible, for us to live right here, right now in these human skins. And I think that's what you teach people.
Love that story. I love that story. You'll love this analogy that came to me in a training I was doing last week. I was teaching how whenever something feels like it's going wrong, anything that seems to be robbing you of your joy, you want to just pause, get clear, and really look at who is suffering right now. Where is the sufferer in this? And then what becomes clear is that it's your horizontal self is suffering, this egoic persona that you've created, this illusory self, really. And once you shift into that, once you can see that, you've shifted into identification with your vertical self, your observer, your soul self, right? Because the vertical self never suffers. Your true soul essence understands that challenges are part of this earth experience and always in service of our evolving somehow, even when we can't see that. So once you've deliberately aligned yourself more fully with your vertical aspect, from that vantage point, you can offer compassion to your horizontal self in the suffering. And that compassion is the key. That's where the healing takes place. So this little analogy that came to me is if you think of a toddler who just watched his ball of ice cream roll off the cone and go splat onto the pavement, and it feels like the end of the world to this child, and he's just wailing out in desperation and disbelief that this horrible thing has happened. And then imagine that you're the loving parent who takes this child in your arms and comforts the child. And you want to acknowledge his suffering because you can see that it's real. He's clearly suffering about this. But at the same time, you, as the loving parent, know that no real harm is coming of this situation. You know there are many ice cream cones in this child's future. You know that this crying jag is temporary and soon he'll be distracted and playing with toys or going down the slide or whatever. And this is what all of our big, horrible challenges look like to the vertical self, right?
Right.
So when you practice identification, which takes repeated practice over lots and lots of time, that's why, joy school is always just an ongoing thing. When you practice that identification, you can be that parent to your horizontal self, no matter what challenge has come up. You can be that source of the compassion. And that's what healing is. That's what we need to heal us into realignment with the bigger picture. And everybody has access to it.
And the guides are saying too, if you don't think that you know how to align with your highest self, like in those moments when you're feeling really overwhelmed, or you don't have an experience like I did, which, just sometimes these things, so you can't make them happen. Sometimes they just do. It's the compassion is the inroads. The compassion is the inroads, because so many people make the choice when things aren't going the way they want them to, between blaming themselves, right? I realized through my experience that was my MO, or blaming life, right?
Oh, for sure.
And you don't have to choose either of those. In those moments, what you really deeply need is just comfort. Just comfort. Wow, my dear human, it's not the melty ice cream guy that scooped it wrong, or maybe it is, but so what? And it's not you for shaking the cone when you shouldn't have, but maybe it is, but it doesn't matter. This is just a sad thing that happened. It's a sad thing that happened. You really wanted that little beautiful ball of ice cream, and now it's on the ground, and that hurts, and I love you.
Right.
And in that moment, you've realigned. In that moment, you've realigned. And every time, the frustration comes back and you soothe it, you've realigned again and again and again and again. And so that's really the inroads right there, is that self-comforting and soothing and loving.
It is. It absolutely is. And I think we can, it's a skill that can be practiced. It's a muscle you can build, just like anything else. But it does take some practice for most of us, only because most of us have been so conditioned away from that being the way we approach our challenges and our suffering. So it's just a habit break.
Yeah.
It's breaking a habit, installing a new habit.
Yeah, I think so too. And you're reminding me of something else that was popping into my mind a little while ago, because sometimes people don't, the selling of joy, the idea that you can have joy. Some people, I think, are afraid of joy because they think, I'm going to lose my edge. I may or may not have given birth to someone like that, who I just adore. But there's this feeling of, if I relax, if this is too fun, if this feels too easy, I won't be motivated to do anything. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this I think is all still where we're taking cues from our primitive brain programming, a part of our brain that we really don't need anymore. We've evolved circumstantially way beyond this, but it's the primitive part of us that was really built for propagation of the species, and to ensure that we keep having new humans. We had to be hyper vigilant of dangers, because there were dangers to our survival at every corner. We had to be competitive over the best mates. We had to hoard our resources for a rainy day. All of that programming doesn't lend itself to relaxing in gratitude for what we have and who we are, because then we might get too complacent. We might lose that ability to spot the danger out there. We might lose our competitive nature, and somebody else is going to get the berries that we needed to hoard that winter. Most of us living in our civilized Western world do not have challenges to our survival on a day-to-day basis, but our brain programming still is sort of skewed that way. So we perceive life as this big competitive thing where we have to watch out for danger around every corner. And so we're creating it. We're creating the situations to simulate scarcity and danger unknowingly by the energy that we're sending out.
And we believe that, if we relax, we're not going to get those berries.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I'm going to tell you what the guides have been telling me again and again about those kind of analogies. So please love me anyway. No, but I'm interested to know what you think about it, because for a long time, and I've had these conversations too with our mutual friend, Chris Niebauer, who's a neuropsychologist. And I think that there's a lot of this idea that your primitive animal brain is fight, flight, or freeze, and that's where all the scarcity and all the fear comes from. What my guides have explained to me is that's not the case. That's not the case. It's the human part of ourselves. It's when we were closer aligned with the animal kingdom, we behaved more like animals did. Animals have no fear because they are part of the web of life. And they may have what looks to us like a fear response that helps them to keep things in balance, right? Because the example that I had years ago, I was meditating on a paddleboard, and I came out of my meditation. I was watching these crabs crawl around on a rock. And all of a sudden it occurred to me, and they were camouflaged, right? And all of a sudden it occurred to me that they weren't camouflaged out of fear of losing their life. They were camouflaged because that's how the circle of life works, right? If every crab was completely easy for the birds to catch, then the birds would eat all the crabs, and then the birds would have nothing else to eat, right? And so it's balance. And so I think that our animal selves, our true nature understands that. But there's been a human co-opting of that reptilian brain that tells us, we need to save those berries. Whereas an animal just, a squirrel just does what a squirrel does. And, they just naturally respond to the environment. And when it's their time to go, they go because, they're not afraid of death because they just understand their part in the web of life. But humans, we don't know that. And because we don't know that, and because we feel disconnected from that, I think that's actually where all this fight, flight, or freeze and craziness really, really comes from. So I think it's a disservice to the animal kingdom when we say like, oh, that's our primitive instinct. I think it's our primitive instinct as informed by the egoic mind. And I think, and this is what the guides are sharing with me, and I feel this is true wholeheartedly, it's gotten worse over time, not better.
Oh my gosh. I was like so hanging on your every word until that last thing. I don't agree with the last part.
Well, I know you don't agree with. Okay, go ahead though.
No, I absolutely love how you make that distinction about the animal kingdom. And it is our disconnect from oneness. And I think that's why humans are these super complex creatures that it's hard to say, which way humanity is going to go.
Right. Yeah.
Because we have that part where we recognize the oneness deep down in our soul. We understand oneness. And I believe that we have moved in the direction of recognizing that to ever greater degrees, in spite of a lot of recent evidence to the contrary. And it is up right now. It's so up in our culture, all the evidence to the contrary. But I think that we collectively, we're moving in the direction of a more evolved, more conscious of the oneness society. And I remember making this point when war broke out in Ukraine, and everybody, oh my gosh, it's just a sign that we're regressing, that we're going backwards. But if you look at how around the whole world, nobody agrees with this war. Nobody was in support of this war. Collectively, everybody thinks that this war is a horrible, horrible atrocity. When 10 minutes ago in human history, like violent takeover was the way nations were born. That was just of like the business of the day. Like, oh, you want to take over a nation, go in violently and destroy things. And that's how we, build empires. That was just understood as like a normal way to business. And today it was this whole, outrage. So I do think that there's a lot of humanity's shadow that's up right now for healing. Yes. It needs to come up.
Yeah. And to clarify, because we've had this conversation before, and I agree with you 1,000%. I even think we had this conversation on your podcast before.
Probably.
If we go back and listen to the first time I guested on your podcast. So yes, and more yes. No, by worse, what I think that the guides were saying, and I'm going to tune into them now, is from the time that we were primitive, quote unquote, more animally aligned beings to now. Right. There was a period of time when the ego really took hold, and the negative ego, because again, we all have this personality. It's a beautiful thing. But when we, it's the ideas of scarcity. It's the idea of fear. It's the idea of war. It's those kinds of things that have almost contaminated that natural, beautiful, primitive system that, we have in our bodies, but we can come back and clean that up. But I don't think we necessarily have to clean that up by, saying our nervous system is dumb. We have to clean that up by sending more loving intentions to our nervous system and retraining her and loving her and explaining, oh, this is how you're supposed to be used, my beautiful friend, that is part of the web of life. And yeah, I agree with you 1,000,000%. I think that we are in a time of great change and a time of great awakening and a time of increasing awareness. And I think that even though the world seems stirred up right now, we've talked about this before, it's sort of like when you're pouring fresh water into a dirty cup, everything gets stirred up for a while, but eventually that dirt's going to start to just flow out of the way, and we're going to be left with beautiful, clear, and beautiful, beautiful water.
Yeah.
So let's talk about joy. Let's talk about the 12 keys. Go. What are the steps, Lisa, now that we have sold everyone on joy? I know that they want to know how to do it.
Okay. Well, I will say underlying all of the 12 keys is this repositioning, this recognition of your vertical self. We do that first through observation. We have different tools. The book is structured to be accomplished over the course of a year. Can't make anybody, not read it. Everybody that I've sent it to for advanced readers has read the whole thing through and then plans to go back and apply the pieces one by one, which is a beautiful way to do it. And I don't discourage anyone from doing it that way. But it's month by month, we go through a theme, and then there's a week of practices that you go bring into your life. Because a lot of us have been on this spiritual path for a while. And I think a lot of the readers who will be drawn to this book, it's not going to be their first dabbling in spirituality and how we create our reality. So it's really about application to your life. So there are personalization processes, there's journaling, there are prompts, there's self-inquiry exercises. And all of that is so that these spiritual principles that I'm not going to say any of them originate with me. I've been a student of these things my whole entire adult life. There's Buddhist principles in there. There's metaphysical principles or psychological principles. They're the tried and true practices that help people come to a greater understanding of how to reposition this vertical nature to be more readily accessible, more able to, in that moment when something is looking ugly out there in our internal landscape, how to realign as the observer. Look at that. Look at this thing that's triggering me right now. Look at how my mind is spinning, looking for someone to blame, or look at how the cortisol is shooting through my veins, or I feel that tightening in my gut that I always get, or that clouded over confusion in my brain. We start noticing these things. So, when you're looking for particular steps, that is where we always start, right? We start with becoming the observer of us, because the more we can train ourselves to do that in the red hot moment, the less the drama is going to unfold for us, the more we're going to be able to have the overview. I always say in Joy School, we're really just pushing pieces around the game board. And I don't mean that to minimize the struggle, because I know a lot of people are facing some really big, heavy things. And I want them to feel my love for them and have love and compassion for themselves in these big, heavy things. But when we can become that soul essence and that observer of our human-y stuffs that are playing out, we see the bigger picture. And that's what's required to create differently, because all of us are creating based on the energy that we're sending out. And that's whatever is getting our big energy, whether our love and appreciation for the good things in our life, which most of us tend to not put as much energy into as we could, because like you were pointing out earlier, Victoria, we're all sort of trained to keep our eye on the danger, keep our eye on the negative, make that the focus of our attention. We have to train ourselves to pour attention into the good things, because whatever we pour more of our energy and attention into, we're going to create more of. And not love the bad things, but neutralize the energy that we have on them. Because anytime we hold something up as this like end of the world situation, we're hating it, we're resenting it, we're complaining about it, we're problem solving really hard. We're just pouring big energy into those things. So in Joy School, when we meet in our groups, it's all about neutralizing the energy that we have over here so that we can just drain it of the bigness, because that's the way things will naturally dissipate and fade out of our lives. It's when we're not continually feeding them and recharging them with our valuable energy.
Yeah. And going back to what we talked about before, and I'm realizing we will not have time to do all 12 keys, friends. So you're going to have to buy the book. But that's what we were talking about at the beginning, too. In those moments, right? That's where compassion comes in, too, right? That compassion is a neutralizer when you're just like, this sucks. And I hate that it sucks. And I hate that it sucks. And Lisa says, and Victoria echoed, that I shouldn't hate that it sucks, but I still hate that it sucks. That's a moment for compassion. And just, I love you, human. Because it does feel like, my vertical self is up there having a party, but I'm not feeling the party right now. And that's when I give myself a lot of hugs and kisses, and I'm super kind.
I love that practice. I love when you hug yourself and kiss your sweet little arms. So I've made you do that on my Joy School program, so my Joy Scholars can see you do that.
All right. So you've mentioned this thing called Joy School in your introduction. I did not mention this thing called Joy School. So as we're starting to wrap up, tell people, in addition to buying and reading your phenomenal book, and I got to be a pre-reader or whatever that's called, so I can vouch for its amazingness. and usefulness. And I've also gotten to play with you in Joy School. So I can vouch for that too. But can you tell listeners a little bit about what that is? I know that there's some changes happening in how you're doing Joy School, and you've been teaching this stuff for decades.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. I'm loving the opportunity to the group right now. We're going to be rolling out some new aspects to Joy School membership. Joy School membership is closed at the moment while we're regrouping, but it'll reopen around the time of the launch. And yeah, it's really a place where if you are practicing the keys in the book, this is where you get live support, live community. You come with your questions, with your experiences. And even if you're not reading the book, because even people who are reading the book are always going to be on different keys at different times, it's the supportive practices for whether you're reading it or no matter where you are in it. These are just the basic trainings. There's videos, there's download meditations, there's all kinds of supplemental material that support the book or that you could do without it if you're just not a reader. So that's what Joy School's about. And yeah, we'll be rolling out new membership options probably the beginning of September.
Yay. Yay. I can't wait for that. And I would say too, right? Like there are 12 keys. There are these different things that you can do, but it's not linear. Is it really linear? I mean, you do it for a year, but then you also, I would just imagine, it's your book, so tell me if I'm wrong, but I would just imagine these are things that we come back to again and again and again, and we deepen our connection with each one, and because these are the fundamentals of life.
Yeah, for sure. The book says at the end of the 12th key, you're invited into the spiral because you'll be a different person by then. You'll definitely, key one will look entirely different from your newly evolved relationship with your consciousness at that point. So I've been spiraling through them forever, as long as I can remember. And my Joy Schoolers, many of them have been spiraling through for many, many, many years now. And it's really the book itself, I do lay it out as a linear journey in the book, but not in Joy School. In Joy School, every principle is applicable at any point, and they're all equally, accessible and valuable and effective no matter where you are. In the book, I do lay it out in a linear fashion just because I use terminology and references later in the keys that you kind of need the prior understanding.
Because it's a book.
Yeah.
Which is a linear thing.
So the first time you go through it, I recommend go chapter by chapter. But after that, if you recognized, where my journey is leading me is really back to chapter 4, which is feel to heal, which is a really big one for a lot of us. You could finish the book and realize, no, I'm going back to that key, because then we have that overview and we know we'll be able to have heightened our intuition. The key that I quote my lovely Victoria in so much will have heightened our own inner knowing enough that we'll be able to intuitively guide ourselves through the book the second time around.
Speaking of intuition, I ask everyone on the show, and you've been on the show twice already, so I got to change up the question. I ask everyone, how do you experience your intuition? But I've asked you that, and I've probably asked you other variations. So today I want to ask you as our last question, how do you experience your intuition in your writing process?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm just going to quickly, because I'm a rebel, address the first question that you didn't ask.
Answer whatever you want. I don't care.
Well, how I experience my intuition, and this is a shout out to you, my love, has changed exponentially since I've been in your orbit. So how I experience, I don't know what I answered at any prior point that you asked me, but you have shown me so much about how to experience my intuition in a meaningful, real, solid is really the only word I can, find for it. It's just like, oh, this isn't just a fun thing that would make life kind of like cool because I have this like secret knowing. This is real. This is how I want to live my life. This is more true than going to my thoughts for an answer to this question. Going to my thoughts for an answer to any question is bullshit, right? Because my thoughts are these made up constructs. Going to my soul, going to my inner knowing, it's so much richer and makes life so much better and more joyful. So that was the answer to the first question that you didn't want the answer.
I'll go with that one. You made happy tears come from my eyes for sure. And I will say too, as we wrap up, and this is relevant to everybody, but it's especially relevant to Lisa. I think one of the other things that, you've come to understand through our time together is how intuitive you are and have always been. Because so often we think it's this, like everything else, it's this illusory thing and this thing that somebody else has that we have to chase, not realizing that we all have it and that we're all using it all the time. And the most important thing that you can do is just start to tune into how it's already happening for you, because it is. And no one writes books like Lisa writes. And we haven't even talked about, she's sold like what, 9.5 million copies of that other book.
Only 9 million. And that's a whole,
Only 9 million. All right. I'm always
all my books combined. So,
all right, whatever. She sold a lot of books. Yeah, just that. Just all my books combined. Yeah. But the deal is all that beautifulness that has come through you, my friend, including the book that we are talking about today, is also part of that intuitive connection, for sure.
for sure. No, it feels that way.
You're like,
Feels that way.
maybe. No, 1,000%. All right. I don't want to stop, but we have to. Can you tell people how to find you, how to find the book, and any other good stuff that you want to share with listeners before we wrap up?
You can order the book anywhere books are sold. Love saying that. And yeah, I'm at Lisa McCourt, my name, LisaMcCourt. And there's a page there that tells you about the book with all the different links for Amazons or Indies or Barnes and Noble, any place you like to buy your books, or you can go directly to those places. And there's all kinds of goodies and bundles if this airs prior to release date, which is August 22nd.
It shall.
Beautiful, beautiful gifts from my talented friends who have contributed online sessions and live experiences with them, in addition to some gorgeous, gorgeous downloads. And Victoria,
I believe that I have offered some free mini readings if you pre-order the book. So if you're listening to this when it goes live, or anytime before August 22nd, you said? 2023, you can pre-order it now. So I would go do that. And then you could get a free, I don't remember how much time I offered, but I think it's a good chunk of time.
You were very generous. It's incredible.
Yeah. So you get a reading with yours truly. So if you've wanted to do that and you're like, I don't really know if I want to spend the money, or I don't really know, buy the book. It's an amazing book. You want it anyway. And then you get like a $17 session with me. I think it's like a 20-minute session, but it's.
Oh, I see. Because the book is $17. Okay.
Yeah, because I think they have to pay for that. You're not giving them the book for free. They're getting the reading when they pre-order the book, because you're all going to pre-order the book now. I know you are, because not only do you get all this wonderfulness, but you can also get a reading with me or some other amazing, because Lisa has a lot of great friends that do amazing things. So there's many great gifts to choose from.
Every first Monday of the month, Victoria and I do First Monday Joy Connection through Joy School. You can get readings there. They're more gallery style. They're not private. They're not, one-on-ones the way you can get by ordering the book, but come to our First Monday Joy Connection. You can find out about that at the website. I do another monthly event, a Joy School Spotlight, that you can find out about. Those are independent events, so you don't have to wait for Joy School membership to reopen. And please take this moment now to book your fall experience that will change your life.
Oh, yeah, that.
Our hosting a retreat at Cactus Blossom Retreat Center, October 13th, 14th, and 15th. Cactus Blossom Retreat Center is the most magical, beautiful place on the planet, and we are leading it together. So come spend time with us. The hugs, I can't tell you, you're going to love the hugs.
Beautiful.
You're going to be such a cozy, just expansive, life transformational weekend is the only way I can explain it.
It's going to be amazing. And it's our big signature event for the fall. So if you want to awaken your intuition, live more joyously, be in a beautiful property in sunny San Diego, surrounded by mountains, and it's just so magical. Great food and just a great experience and great community. Sign up for that. We'll have all that information in the show notes. Totally forgot about First Monday, which is my favorite day of the month, because I get to play with Lisa in her group, and we do what we're doing now. And I also we talk about her 12 keys, and I also give group readings in there too. And it's just such a joy and so much fun. So many ways to connect. Buy the book, book your free whatever, sign up for the retreat for sure. And thank you all for tuning in, because I met this lady because I have this podcast. And she's one of my bestest friends. And you all know, because I talk about her all the time on the show, even when she's not here. And it's because of you guys. It's because of you that I get to do what I get to do, and I get to meet and connect with these amazing people. And I love you all, and I'm so grateful. And I hope you all feel the love. So have a wonderful day, and namaste.
Love you, sister. Bye.
I love you too.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you found joy, strength, inspiration, and clarity from today's episode. If you'd like to learn more and connect with an amazing group of like-minded souls, please join us over on Facebook in the Intuitive Connection Community Facebook group, where we explore these topics in deeper detail, have additional live teachings, and host Facebook Lives with our amazing guests. I hope to see you there. And of course, if you want to learn more about me or the work that I do, please check out my webpage, victoriashawintuitive.com. Thank you so much again, and namaste.